Allison, you want to come on in? Just close that door. Okay. So I'm Erin Ryan. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
I'm the manager for the Admitting and Bed Coordination Center.
Okay.
And we got your resume, so I got to review that a little bit. I hope you don't mind if we take some notes here while I'm asking you questions. Okay. How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Good. All right. So let me just get started here. I'm going to start by, are you comfortable?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start by just kind of giving you an overview of our bed management area.
Okay.
And how it came to be, just so you kind of understand the history.
Okay.
It helps a little bit. So in 2003, they identified a need for a bed management area.
Okay.
We didn't have one prior to that. And then in March of 2004, they did a pilot for the main hospital for bed management.
Mm-hmm.
And then in June of 2004, they ended up doing a pilot for the Mott Hospital.
Okay.
So up until that point, they were only doing main, and then they did it for Mott in June. And then in 2016, the admitting area and the bed managers joined together because they were separate before. And that's kind of how it came to be as admitting bed management coordinator.
Okay.
They were Monday through Friday up until 2008, and then after that they became 24/7. So we are now 24/7. Obviously, you're wanting to work nights.
Right.
And that was a position that you applied for. So, and then in 2017, we ended up getting a new bed management system.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already in place, so you won't have to deal with that. But,
Okay.
So I will go ahead and tell you a little bit about the position and
Okay.
kind of what we do here. So all the patient flow coordinators, which is the position you apply for. Yes, thank you. Are nurses, and we have other people in the transfer center that we work with. Some are nurses, some are dietitians, and then we have, they're called ATAs. They sit in the back. They're kind of like what a tech would be under a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 3 different sections, but we all work together to bring patients in.
Okay.
And so what our primary role is to bring, it's throughput for the patient. So anybody that gets admitted through the ER, whether it's Mott or the main hospital, we find them a room, and it seems easy, but not so much.
Yes.
And in the main hospital, they're not all private rooms. In Mott, there are private rooms.
Okay.
We also coordinate with the cardiovascular center. We cover them at night, so it affects the night shift heavily.
Okay.
And it's just another hospital essentially. So essentially you're managing the beds of 3 hospitals.
Okay.
And we also coordinate with the transfer center to bring patients from all over the world. So it's busy.
Mm-hmm.
And the ER gets busy, we get backed up, and trying to find the correct room at the right time and for everything to fit together, it can be overwhelming at times.
Okay.
So anyway, do you have any questions about the actual position?
No, it just sounds overwhelming.
Well, so I looked at your resume,
Mm-hmm.
and you have over 30 years in labor and delivery, I see.
Yes.
So I'm sure there's been times in labor and delivery where it's been overwhelming.
Oh, yes. Yes, it has.
So this will be just, you'll see.
Okay.
This will be, you'll be familiar with that feeling. Now, so over 30 years in labor and delivery. Now, was your entire nursing career in labor and delivery?
Yes.
Okay. So let me ask you a few questions. We're gonna go through a few questions here, and then we can talk after if you have any questions.
Okay.
And then I can, give you a tour of the area.
Okay.
And there may be some nurses out there that, you can speak to if
Okay.
you have other questions.
Yes, questions.
Okay. So, I'm gonna start by asking you a couple questions. What type of qualities do you possess that make you the right fit for the job responsibilities?
Well, only having clinical experience, well, that's not true. Before I was a labor and delivery nurse, I worked as a labor and delivery, unit clerk, which was
Okay.
kind of like a bed manager because our patients came in through the ER or
Okay.
through the front door, so we prioritized them. And this was before I was ever a nurse, and put them in the rooms.
Oh,
We
okay.
admitted them, like, we did all the paperwork, got their insurance and stuff like that, admitted them, and then put the orders in to get the patients what they needed,
Oh.
as the nurses or the physicians ordered them. So
Okay.
that's how I started at L&D. Before that, I worked, in physicians' offices when I was in nursing school, as medical assistant, so dealing with patients and dealing with other, healthcare staff, you know, like, lab and, doing admits to the hospitals and stuff like that. So
Okay.
making contact calls was things I did way before I ever was an RN.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, I'm glad to hear that because we do have a lot of, conversations over the phone with,
Mhm.
you know, charge nurses.
Right,
Administrators,
Mhm.
you know, especially like when we're in high occupancy and, you know, rooms, we don't have enough rooms.
right,
There's just a lot of communication, so it's good to know that you have experience even like placing people.
right,
Cause I think that'll be an asset,
yeah.
you know,
Well,
when
the
it
same with
comes,
labor triage in our triage area. Our patients walked in off the street,
right,
or were the ER calling saying there's an ambulance coming in 3 minutes and the
Right.
patient's actively delivering, so you have to put in place how you're gonna handle that, who you're
Okay.
gonna pull to take care of that
yeah,
issue,
so
and work as a
that is
team.
good to know as well, just because, you know, we get a lot of unexpected
Right,
type issues that come up
Right.
along the way. So, you know, working in labor and delivery for that long, I'm sure you ran into difficult, personalities, let's
Yes.
say. Okay, so identify a situation when you had to deal with a difficult person and how did you handle it?
are you talking about patient or staff, or both?
I would say, let's go with staff,
Staff.
yeah,
Um,
like someone that was kinda hard to work with or.
Yes, well, in all walks of life.
Yeah.
But I was charge nurse, majority of the time that I worked, the last 10 years. So making assignments and having people refuse to do the assignment because they didn't feel like doing it, or they feel like they're being picked on because they have to do a certain assignment on this day, takes a lot of, not backpedaling, but a lot of, coordination with your staff to make it work. And sometimes it was getting tough with the staff and saying, like, this is the job that you have, you know, we're all here for the patient's benefit. If you don't feel you can do the job, then, you know, we would direct her to the house manager and
Okay.
have them deal with it that way. But
Okay.
to de-escalate any kind of animosity between staff members was always a big thing, because there's always strong personalities in the
Yes.
department, and 99% of the time it worked well. We all pulled together and could get the job done, but there were times where you just face the facts, lay it out, and if it's not resolvable, then you take it to a higher level.
Okay, good. Yeah, because we do have, like I said, we work with the ATAs, which is kind of like a nurse tech would be.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of work under you to place, they're actually placing the patients,
Mhm.
and we're kind of, you know, we oversee it, but
Right.
we have the final say.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes there can be a disagreement as to like what patient would go where or who gets bedded where, and we're responsible technically,
Right.
you know, because we have to
Yeah.
answer to the administration.
Right,
And they're, you know, under us,
Right.
per se, like,
in the hierarchy.
yes. So it's good to know that you have some experience, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
with that. Okay, another question. Give an example of a time in which you had to be relatively quick in coming to a decision.
Work related,
Yeah.
in labor and delivery is somebody coming in, actively pushing and finding out after they get to the actual floor, if they try to deliver at home, that their baby's breech. We have to immediately switch over to, we're not delivering this baby vaginally, we have to go to the OR and getting your staff where you need to get them, to have the skills to go back and open an OR and get the case started.
Good.
Each of us, you know, have to have those skills, but
Yeah.
when you're in charge, is to delegate that to the people that you know can pull through and do the job.
Okay, good. So that leads to my next question about delegation. is provide an example of a time when you had to delegate, and what factors do you feel are important in delegation?
Well, delegation it's a daily, hourly thing. You delegate, as a charge nurse, you're delegating the patient care and, what's best and safe for the patient. So I mean, like I have said in the previous question, there are sometimes staff members that feel like they're either being picked on or, they just don't like to work. And so you have to be strong and say, listen, this is for the best of the patient. If it becomes an issue, then it goes to the higher ups.
Right.
But you also have to step in and be able to do the job yourself, which, I've been working there as long as I have. It was, it's just like, if they didn't do it, I would do it, but it would be dealt with
Yeah.
in an administrative form later. So,
Okay.
yeah, you have to have a wide range of knowledge base.
Good. So one of the hot topics here at Michigan Medicine is our private rooms, because we don't,
Right.
especially in the main hospital, we don't have all private rooms. And
Okay.
it's a hot commodity, but we do, more and more we have tons of patients on precautions
Mhm.
or that have a special need that need a private room. So, if a charge nurse called you requesting a private room, would you allow her, for a patient that's, let's just say they're either on the floor or they're coming up from the ER, would you allow her to move the patient if they weren't on precautions, or
I would have
what
to,
action would you take?
I
if
would
you-
talk to the charge nurse and find out the backstory. I mean,
Okay,
if there is a history, if it's a patient who is, there are major life events happening here. So if it's a new cancer diagnosis or if it's end of life,
Yeah.
I would be more apt to work with the charge to try to facilitate what's best for the patient. And I think that would be a hard call, but I also think that doing this job, you have to, where I've come from, it's always about the patient and your staff. And here it's about the patient, but I think it's mostly about the staff to validate their reason for calling.
yeah,
Like,
yes,
they obviously have a feeling, and as a nurse working on the floor, as long as I have, if I'm calling you to request something, there's usually a backstory
Yeah.
or a
Okay,
reason.
good. Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be issues where it's just like the patient wants it, but
yeah.
if there's people waiting, I would think that
Yeah.
we would.
And the only reason I asked that question is because we get a ton of requests for private rooms. I
Mhm.
mean,
Just for patient requests.
yeah. And we really have to be, diligent in kind of making that decision, because then we end up with, patients no bedded in the ER if we're just freely giving them.
Right.
But, like you said, if there's a legit reason, and the charge is voicing a
I-
concern,
Yeah.
we do default to the charge nurses quite a bit. But then sometimes we have to say no,
Yeah.
so,
That's where I came from. All of our labor rooms were private, but
Were they?
postpartum rooms, we had like 9 or 10 double bedded rooms, and that
Okay.
was not.
I know, it's
And
hard.
you understand, so we would
Yeah.
fill those last with the expectation that we would get them moved out as soon as we could.
Right.
Which wasn't good, probably financially, because you're
Right.
always moving people, but
I know.
Yeah.
So Mott, all those rooms are private over
Okay.
in the children's hospital, but in the main hospital, they are not. So we
Okay.
get more of those conversations with the
Okay.
main hospital.
What
Just-
about the
just-
cardiovascular center?
So the cardiovascular, let me just think here, there's semi-private rooms and privates.
Okay.
Well, obviously, but like CBC 5 is one of the units, it's like a step-down unit, they have all private rooms, but then there's like 4C, which is a thoracic surgery floor,
Okay,
those are semi-privates. So
Okay.
there's a mixture,
yes,
but it just makes it hard sometimes when, people are asking for private rooms
Right.
for non-medical reasons, but
Right.
we do have to take it into consideration, so.
okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I have one last question here. Have you ever had to sell an unpopular idea? And if so, what was the idea and how did you go about selling it?
Actually, being a charge nurse in my job, the unpopular idea was actually having nurses stations. We didn't have a nurses station.
Okay.
We had a workroom
Okay.
where we ate our lunch, and then we had a physician's area where they charted. But when the hospital was built, they did actual little alcoves in the hallway. And that's where you charted, but there was no
Okay.
central nurses station, so there's no one place for like anybody to go looking for help, like the patient or patient visitor.
Okay,
So, when we first moved into the hospital, which was 20 years ago, we, as nurses, came together and said, you know, this isn't gonna work, and, it didn't go over really well, because, you know, this was a brand new hospital, and this is the
Right.
vision that they had, and it's worked in other hospitals, but we, as a collective group, didn't see how it would work, because there was no central area for people to go to, like the nurses' stations around the corner.
right,
There wasn't one. And
okay,
if the nurse wasn't in the pod, in the hallway, not out in the hallway, but stuck in like a,
yeah,
like a closet area,
okay,
then the people were wandering all over the place. So we went to management and asked, we put a suggestion in, is there a way to like convert the physicians area into half and half, and it didn't go over really well because the physicians didn't want to give up their space.
I see,
So the pods were left, but the consensus or the solution to the problem was that we share the space with the physicians, and which is difficult because the physicians, you know, it's like,
yeah,
I'm a physician coming in, you should get up and leave your computer while you're charting. So it didn't go over well, but you know, you make it work, and because it's a place where most people were, that's where people were usually sent,
okay,
to 1188, the room around the corner with the glass windows. So yeah, that was hard, and it's still one of those things that's like, it's a functioning thing, but I mean, it's total restructure of the floor, and it
yeah,
just wasn't. Yeah.
change is difficult.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked this question, because when we have to do a lot of, I don't know what the correct word is, coaxing, or kind of guiding nurses, to take patients they may not want to,
Okay.
because we are union, the nurses are unionized here, so there is a cap on patient load, and they're very, you'll find here in Michigan, they're very, what's the word I'm looking for, service focused, so, you know, surgical patients go to the surgical floor, when they have to take medicine patients, it's a bit of a push.
Yeah. Well, I work in a union hospital, so
Okay,
I understand
perfect.
that, yeah.
Yeah, so we do kind of have to sell sometimes our story
Right.
about the patient,
Okay.
just to ease the nurses into, you know, maybe taking them,
What's best for the patient.
yeah, and to make sure that the patients are flowing, you know, the time frame that, like, they're moving, so, that's the reason I asked that question. Do you have any questions for me
No,
at this point?
there's a lot of learning that will need to be done on my part, just because of, I mean, I was in one area for such a long time, but I'm willing to do something
Yeah, and I
looking for
think,
something for change.
there is a lot of learning, but it's doable. We don't have a set time frame for, orientation.
Okay,
We do it based on, you
my
know,
skills.
your skills, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, people, you know, of all ages learn differently,
Right.
so we take that into consideration, and it's a lot of information.
Yeah.
You know, you need to understand each of the floors and what they do, but we have a pretty robust orientation here, so,
Okay.
no worries.
Okay.
You know, if this ends up working out, or, you know, we would get you through that. So what will happen now is I'm gonna continue interviewing. I have a few more candidates,
Okay.
by the end of the week. And then we will contact you regardless.
Okay.
But in the meantime, if you wanted to, you know, sit one day or shadow,
Job
you know,
shadow.
just kinda ask some questions to the staff, we
Okay.
can certainly provide that for you.
I would like to do that.
And then once, well, basically, it'll be next week that you would get the phone call either
Okay.
way, okay? After we get done interviewing,
Okay.
okay? Do you have any questions? The shift, so the shift that you applied for is a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. We usually have 2 nurses on the night shift. They usually have 4 on day shift. As far as breaks, you know, you kind of work it out amongst each other. We're pretty flexible. We are considered salary.
Okay.
And then, you know, depending on, like if you have specific questions about like benefits and whatnot, I could connect you with someone from Human Resources if you have any questions about retirement or whatnot.
Healthcare.
Yeah, if it comes to that, then
Okay.
we'll get you connected with someone over there. So overall though, I think you have a lot of great qualities, yeah, that, you know, fit into this kind of position. Your experience in labor and delivery certainly, you know, is a bonus.
Yeah, the
Um,
longevity of it.
Yeah, and I just think, you know, you in labor and delivery, there's so many different things going on, and it's kind of like this is here.
Yeah.
We're like the air traffic controllers of the hospital.
Right.
So you got, you know, things going on, and I feel like that labor and delivery is a lot
Right.
like that. So that's where you're gonna be a step above, you know, others,
Right.
because of that kind of, the nature of the work. So that's good. It may take you a little bit longer, you know, to learn, just because you have been in labor and delivery for so
Right.
long, but it's not a negative, it's just,
Right.
you know, it may take you longer.
Yeah.
And we'd be
Learning
willing,
the floors
you know,
and
we'd be
stuff.
willing to work that out, like I said.
Okay.
So that's the only thing, and then if you need extra, if you ever felt like you needed extra, you know, learning experiences, we can certainly, you know, connect you with a cardiovascular coordinator. So we're pretty flexible there.
Okay.
All right, any other questions
No.
about the
I'm just
position?
excited about the
or-
potential for change.
Okay, good. All right, well, it was very nice meeting you.
Thank you.
You can expect to hear from us next week
Okay.
either way. And I think that's it.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Okay,
nice to meet
thank
you,
you.
Allison. Yep,
Meet you too.
take care. Have a good day.
Grab mine.
Okay, sure.
Thanks.
Mhm.